Welcome to What's the Word, the podcast that sparks conversation about the electrical industry. Join Zach Hartle and me, Jason Cox, as we explore people, innovations, and the stories that make this trade so exciting. Let's dive in.
Today we're joined by John Wiesel from Suderman Estimating. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's good to be here. It's been a little bit coming. It's been some back and forth, so glad we were able to coordinate and squeeze this in.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into Suderman Estimating and just estimating in general, I know you've got quite the CV of experience with estimating, but just tell us a little bit about your background, maybe up until you went to Suderman.
Yeah, I mean, I guess all the way back to my childhood. The quick thing on that is I've always been building. I've always been designing. So yeah, I took architecture classes. I took every trade type of class I could in high school. I've always liked building things and creating things. Yeah, and then I kind of got into electrical. I looked at it as an option as I really wanted to learn more about that trade and building it, like the woodworking part and everything else I kind of had down. I was like, I'd come back to that. So I thought I'd get out there and get my electrical license and then maybe come back around. I got my electrical license. I got my master's license. I ended up getting opportunities to run jobs as a foreman. And then I got some really cool opportunities at TMMC, Toyota Motor Manufacturing in Ontario. So I worked there as their Kanban specialist and took care of it's like a QA QC type position for the electrical and mechanical on that site. That was about 3 years, that opportunity. And then shortly after that, I was looking to move out somewhere, and my spouse had an opportunity to do her master's at USC in Calgary. So, I packed her up and flew her out with her best friend, and I kind of finished up what I was working on at the time, and then flew out and met her here. And when I applied for work here, I didn't really know anyone, so I thought I'll apply to be a foreman. That gets me back on the tools. That gets me back, building stuff again and managing crews, and we ended up liking it, so we stayed out here. And with a year into it, you get with some of my organizational techniques from being trained in certain office positions, estimating, project management. I did things in the field that they were like, well, hey, can you come help us do some estimating? So I'd get in there and they were like, hey, have you done this before? And I was like, yeah, a couple times, right? So then you get into doing that a bit more and running projects again. And then I was just right back into it here where I was before I moved out here. So yeah. And on the estimating side of things, it seems to be the job that, everyone wants to be a project manager. Doesn't seem to be the same vibe for estimators. So I'm happy in any position out here. I like construction in general, but with estimating, it seems to be a highly needed position, and I am able to fit that role and do that work. And throughout doing that, my dad had a business with electrical estimating training for 20 years that he bought from someone that had it for 20 years before him, and he was trying to get me into it for a bit. So I said, why don't I take a year off? I'll get into the business, because I was also busy. I couldn't really spend that spare time helping him like I thought I could. And then it's been 3.5 years now. And we got all different sides of the business. We do training and help people put estimates together across Canada and sometimes in the US as well.
I always like it when we're talking to people, and you don't have to be a person who did an apprenticeship and became a journeyman or journey person, but I always like it when I'm talking to people that have actually been in the trenches, pulling the wire and doing some of that stuff. John, can you tell us a little bit about your company, Suderman Estimating?
Yeah, so it started out in Regina, Saskatchewan with Peter Suderman. He ran a successful electrical company out there, and he didn't feel like his competition knew how to estimate very well. So he tried to find an estimating course to recommend to these guys to take, and he couldn't find one. So he found a fellow that kind of put something like that on in the States. He went down there, worked with him on it, and created his own little course. And, that's what he did. He semi-retired from the business, sold it off, and he kind of did that for, a good 15, 20 years later in his career. And then I had taken it when I was in probably 20 years old in Ontario. And my dad was well-versed in him. They put a lot of people through his course. And he kind of came to my dad and say, hey, look, I'm looking for someone to take it over. I know you guys would you be interested, right? So um, they cut a deal, and my dad bought Suderman. And at that point, he started doing a bit more consulting type work, but that was more high level consulting. Still teaching the courses, and then when I got involved 3 years ago, we had people asking us for certain things. You know, someone that can do this, or you know, someone that can do that. And I said, well, I don't really know a business out there that does it, but I can help you do that, right? And it's created a whole other side to our business now. Again, my whole life just doing the work other people seem less enthusiastic about turns into a career of sorts, because it's picking up the pieces that they don't want to do, right? Um, yeah, and looking forward into it. Um, I'm seeing a lot of services are coming out with estimating, and a lot of companies are jumping in. And I thought maybe that would kind of die down, that side of our business, and would go back more to the training side of it. But people seem to keep coming back, or they'll go out and try something else and come back again. So I think we're doing something right. It's more than just um, it's more than just counting, right? It's
Well,
you're looking at a whole project. You're looking at catching all the things that aren't on the drawings, asking the right questions.
and that's the big thing when like we were talking in the past and then just recently about this these thoughts in the trade about the project manager, the PM, and then there's a different attitude towards the estimating. So it's not just counting. So we're gonna have to have a little chat about that as we're going through this today. You're mentioning the training that you guys provide. You want to just kind of let us know like how many courses that you guys put on, you offer, maybe just a little bit of background information of what sort of things I might learn in the different courses if I was considering taking some estimating training.
Yeah. So the base courses we have, we just call them course one, course two right now. We're gonna have some. We do have some new offerings already, but what those two courses always have been is just more teaching the practical side of having a systematic way of doing your takeoff. And we've seen. I even wondered, like, how come our course just keeps rolling through and other ones keep coming out, but we just kind of keep rolling through across Canada with all these courses, right? No matter whatever ones come out, and it always seems like a lot of them are overviews. You know what I mean? They don't start at like, this is how you count. It sounds really basic, but in electrical, there's a box with a receptacle in it, with marrettes in it, with a wire going to it that has a connector on it, right? So you go through the theory of it, and then someone sits down and, okay, where do I start, right? So that's what Suderman does, is like, that's the where do I start part. This is how you're going to count this, and this is how you're going to make sure you capture every nick and knack in that thing, so that when you're closing the job, you're confident that you didn't miss anything. And that seems to be the biggest thing, is like that moment of panic. The job's closing, you only got a day left. Did I get everything? Is there this or that, right? It's not like a wall assembly or a floor assembly where there's 3 or 4 items in it and you can almost square foot it, right? Electrical, you need to get the linears, you need to get the counts, and with those things, there's a whole slew of products in each assembly or item that you're looking at, right? Whether it be a light fixture or a receptacle or a big switchboard or MCC.
And so the courses, I'm guessing course two builds off of course one. It's a little more complex and detailed.
Yeah, so course one, we use really basic items, and what happens sometimes is guys that are more advanced in the trade, they'll start saying, okay, I know this, right? And we have to explain, this isn't about counting a receptacle or a light. We know that you know how to do that. We know you know what that product is. It's about getting this methodology down now. So when we get to course two, which is more power distribution stuff, you are able to apply that methodology to it practically, right?
The courses that I'm taking, am I taking them online and listen to you like on a recording, or is it in person, or is
They're
it
live in
synchronous?
person courses, yeah, and that's another thing in the industry. I've seen a lot of some have come out and done just online. You can do it whenever you want. But for us, we try to keep it practical and basic and simple. Even with us, the client I was just talking to before I got on with you guys, he said, "Hey, took your course. I love your labor manual, right? Because we have our very own labor manual. He said it's basic, like it's like a third of the size of like the industry standard one, and it doesn't have like 100 of these items in here. It has like the one I need, right? And that's what we try to do is we try to just to dial it back, keep it very generic, very basic, things that you can apply to a lot of things, right? So we're not teaching a code class. We're not teaching all those things. We're teaching takeoff methodology and the best way to make sure you can quantify all the things you need and feel comfortable that you got it at the end of the job. So when you close it, you're just putting that labor rate on the markup and that you've captured everything you need to catch.
And are these courses focusing on a specific software or just the general, like, do it by hand, Excel spreadsheet? Like,
so yeah, when we teach them in person and online. It was in person for most of the time until COVID, and then we kind of pushed into doing it online. It's still better in person. You can see when people are maybe not keeping up or missing something. But we've created a good system that we can teach it online, and it has become the more popular option. For doing it in person, you have to try to rally up a group of people in certain regions to do it as well. Online, we can have guys from Vancouver, Trail, BC, Thompson, Manitoba, Nova Scotia, right? So it's a lot more available to run them, and we've been running more often with our online courses.
Do you find that the skills that you're working on in the courses transfer across the country? Like, it doesn't matter which region you're in, the basic concepts that you guys are working with, they work everywhere?
Even in the States. We even teach people from the States, and the only problem we have there is just the unit of measurement kind of crossover, and then maybe some trade terminology, right? Where they use MC cable, not AC90, and just certain trade terminologies, very similar stuff, but the labor rates apply the same. But for the most part, yeah, we try to keep it very generic. And as far as softwares go, I used AccuBid for a long part of my career. That was kind of the standard in Canada. I was always familiar with McCormick. And then recently we've gotten involved with Patabid. They've become a good partner of ours as well. And I really enjoy working with that software. It's really easy to jump into and just use out of the box. And I find with a lot of our clients, they're not big corporate companies. A lot of our clients that come in, they're either putting people through the course if they are a bigger company to learn the basics of estimating. Then they have their own systems that they put them into. But our clients that are looking that, don't have software yet, that are looking at learning the industry, I find are more into Excel and things like that, right? They're familiar with Excel, and I find Patabid, the formulas and things like that you can use in there, it transfers really easily. So if you're familiar with Excel, you can jump in Patabid. You can start doing a lot of really cool stuff. If you're not, you can jump into it and use it pretty easily too. Where the legacy companies, a bit more like spaceships, you kind of got to learn to fly the spaceship a little bit before you get in there. If you don't, you could actually do some things that could cause you issues, right? So nothing against those options. Just a lot of people we work with at the level they're at, they don't quite need the enterprise kind of solutions some of those companies have. And Excel is always a good option. Excel is great. I've used it for project management. I've used it for estimating. Been at a few companies, had a few different experiences. And what I've learned is the most important part is that a company has a system in place and that everyone kind of goes with that system, right?
Absolutely.
You could have the best system in the world and people don't know how to use it. It's really cumbersome, which I guess it wouldn't be a good system then, right? But or you could have the most basic system out there and everyone's on board and everyone is working together. And I guess it's the old culture eats systems for breakfast, right? I was always big on systems. I was a systems guy. Someone said that to me and it opened my eyes. I saw that a lot, especially in the field. You can have the best systems in place, but if people aren't on board, it doesn't matter. You can have maybe not the best systems in place, but as long as you got something and everyone's working together, that's where I've seen a lot of success.
Okay, perfect. So, first of all, shout out there, right? Melvin Newman was on the podcast, episode 16 from Patabid, using new technology, new things in estimating, talks a little bit about the history of estimating. So, really good episode for our listeners if you haven't heard that one yet. You talked also, John, about kind of the consulting side. So, courses, training on estimating process technology, that's one thing. On the consulting side, how can you guys work with a company and help them with estimating? Are you talking they come to you with a project and you can look at their work and see if they missed anything, or how does that relationship work?
Yeah, so for consulting, initially when we got more involved with it, it was at a higher level. So a lot of times we'd be dealing with the client, moreover, and they'd be asking us, okay, we want to add this. Is it worth it, right? Because an engineer is going to design it a certain way, and then an electrical contractor is going to come in and want to charge a certain amount of money for it, and they want to know, is this really the best way to go about it? Is this what it should cost? So kind of at that level, right? And then just being on site sometimes, meeting and helping them come up with solutions. That's kind of how that side started. What we do now a lot is actual estimating consulting, where we have people coming to us saying, "Hey, do you know anyone that can help us like get this job taken off, and or do this part of it, or help us close the project?" Right? So I started saying, "Yeah, we can help you do that." And yeah, we'll jump in, and we got clients that work at all different levels of it. Some guys say, this is the software we use. A lot of times we can get into it to do the work on it for them, and they'll say, we got this part of the job. Can you just take off this part for us? And that's all we'll do. We got other clients that are like, we need a full service, like help us take it off, help us go through and close it, help us set our labor rates, kind of give us some idea what markups we need to put on it. So yeah, it's really any level they need, we're able to jump in and help them with. And it's a trickier side of the business, because when it was more the high level consulting, we had better timelines. With our courses, we got a lot of tarmac, right? We can set the courses up, we can fill them. We got a good amount of time for planning, getting the materials to people. Now with the estimating consulting, sometimes guys come to us, this closes in 3 days or 5 days. I had it sitting on my desk. Can you help us get it out, right? So it's been a lot trickier, but we've been managing. I've been sleeping less sometimes, but all part of the business, right? And figuring things out.
Another question I want to ask here. So I think you kind of answered this here, John, but when we talked about the consulting, that sounds like that's like a higher level or like a bigger corporation kind of thing. But if we get back to like your customer that's coming in to take the estimating course, is this like the new, I'm starting my electrical company because I'm a really solid tradesperson. So like one or two employee companies versus like a multi-province electrical corporation? Or
It's about half and half. So we get about half of our guys taking the course are from the bigger companies. They're just trying to get a certain amount of people trained up in that methodology of doing the takeoff, right? I mean, just sidetrack a little bit. When I took the course, I was more at a journeyman level. And the methodology that I learned for doing that takeoff, I actually took it to my foreman kind of level. And that's how I would lay a job out and take it off and then organize my materials and those things, right? So I think a lot of people taking that course one from larger companies, they're putting through their journeyman, like I said, even some administrative people and things like that, just to kind of give them that organizational technique for doing that. And then the other half, are those people that, saw an opportunity or thought, I can put in a plug, I can install a light, I'm going to start an electrical business, right? And then once you get into it, you realize, there's an accounting side to it. There's an estimating side to it. There's a business side to it. All these things that are kind of can be a full-time job in a large company. In a small company, they're all small part-time positions that, most small business owners need to be able to learn, right? So a lot of those people are coming in that are like, yeah, no, I thought I knew what I was doing, but, I kind of figured out my books. I figured this out, but the estimating, I'm kind of slipping on. Or what they'll do is they'll have a good client and they do more service work. And that's a different beast, right? Like service work, you're a lot of T&M, you're tracking stuff, you bill out your labor rate, you just put through the invoices and receipts from your suppliers, and then you put your markup on it, right? And they pay that bill, and then they get opportunities to do bid work, and they go, oh, maybe they think I can do it, and they start looking into it, and they're like, I don't know where to start, right? And then a lot of times that's when they reach out to us, and we'll get them going on it. And a lot of it I found is industry word of mouth. People will, go to their friend like, hey, how do you do this, right? And they'll say, you got to contact these guys at Suderman. They'll get you set up. And then, we get them going in our courses.
Yeah, the administration timelines versus the on-site job wire pulling. I mean, that's something that I think as an apprentice and even as a working journeyman, sometimes you don't recognize what's going on in the background in order to make the company continue to actually work, right? So, I mean, I'm sure that burns out a lot of potential or new owners of companies is putting in the 8 hours on the job site and then going home for the next 8 hours of doing the books and the bids and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And what we've learned is a lot of people do that for free. And I'm like, that's an estimator's job. Like someone gets paid to do that, these big companies, right? Same with your bookkeeping. Like hire a bookkeeper, maybe you're not charging enough. Like you think you're giving your clients. I think a lot of tradespeople are really sincere too, and they think maybe the bigger companies are overcharging, and they don't realize that there's a lot more involved in putting that plug in that light in, right? Even with their labor rates, they'll say, "Oh, it doesn't take us half an hour to put a light in." Well, it's not half an hour to put the light in. It's a half hour. You need to receive it on site. Someone's going to move it from point A to point B. Your foreman's time is in there, so they got to organize it, right? Once the light hits the ground where it's going up and you put it up, that's only a portion of the time. It's only a portion of the labor that's allocated to that, right? So a lot of people that haven't taken the course before, they might look at, more industry standard rates and be like, oh, that's way too long, right? But there's a lot more in it than just sticking the plug in the wall.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have a friend of mine that was asked to do a job recently, and it was going to be a half day job, and but it involved 3 hours of travel time,
Yeah.
and the customer was not happy with it. Like, well, I'm not paying you for this, and so I mean, it was just an innocent thing that the customer didn't realize. Like, hey, I'm not driving to your location for free with my truck. I mean, there's truck costs, there's healthcare costs, there's accounting costs, bookkeeping costs. I mean, the company has you got to pay the electrical bill. Like the lights have to be on, and just like you said, putting the receptacle or the light up in its final location. Well, that's the end of it, other than the customer paying the bill. So.
I don't want to take away from the course, of course, John, but you just talked about how accounting for everything in the process, right? We got to go put a plug in the wall, order the plug, deliver the plug, bill for the plug, bookkeep for the plug. Do you have some other, things that you see often from the smaller companies or people just getting into their own business that would really just help them get a leg up?
Yes, and no one's gonna like the answer. It's all like work. We get a lot of people coming in and they look for the easy button. There's not an easy button, but there's a better button. Put the easy button away, put your thinking cap on, right? Come up with better ways to do things. And that's the essence of it is, here's the best way we've come up with to itemize this stuff to help you put this together, right? Take that and make your own way with it. Some people will come and they ask us, okay, well, you'll give me a quote. No, I'm not giving you a quote. If I was going to give a quote, I would just give it to the GC myself and do the job, right? We will help you build to that part, right? So it's all learning. You got to be able to commit to it. and you got to be able to put the time in, right? I've had clients that clearly have a case of ADHD, and some of them just jump all over and they say they're going to do stuff and then they don't, and then there's got to be another way to get someone else to do it. And I'll get the same type of person and they'll say, look, I know I got to figure this out. And they sit down and they put their nose to the grindstone, they figure it out. And then on the other end of it, they're better for it, right? And that kind of comes back to the unit pricing things. Like I said, there's a lot of clients in BC that come to us. Well, we got this unit price. We use $125 a receptacle. Where? Well, that's what we use. I'm like, where? In a house? On a commercial job? In an industrial facility? Like, where is this plug? Even if it's in a residential house, is it in an apartment building? Is it in a detached home? Is it in a mansion, right? All those things are going to have different stuff on it. So what we really try to encourage and promote is learn those basic items, right? Learn how to do it. Like just once, go through it. Build your own unit price. Because then you're going to walk on a job site and you're going to know $125 works for this plug. I can use that as my unit price to kind of gauge a cost here, right? Or this is a mansion, this run's going to be way longer, right? Or I'm in a commercial building, I'm going to run 100 feet of conduit down here before I do a drop to receptacle, right? That's not $125. So, don't just pull numbers out of the air. Some of this stuff I think has been going around for 10 or 15 years. Like how outdated is some of that pricing now, right? So build your unit price, put the time in, come up with your own methods, learn the industry, right? A big one I talk to with people is they don't have relationships with suppliers, right? They can put in a plug, they can put in a light, but I'm like, who are your suppliers, right? Well, I just buy from this company. Okay, who's your rep there? I don't have one. Do you talk to these lighting manufacturers here? No, I just go through the distributor, right? I'm like, well, they don't have all the information, right? So it's a whole other side of it that they don't think of, and some of them, they just want to do the install. They don't want to deal with that, and I try to say, okay, we'll get someone in your company that wants to do that, then, right? A lot of times, their spouse is their bookkeeper too. Maybe they're a bit more social. Maybe they're able to talk with your suppliers a bit more and build that relationship, right? So there's just a whole side to it. You can't just, we can help you get the counts done. We can help you get that part finished. We can help you, decide what markups to put on, what labor rates you should use if you're unsure still. But if you're not getting the right pricing from wholesalers and suppliers, then it's, I don't want to say a waste of time, but it might not be the right opportunity for you, right? Mm-hmm. There are certain jobs too that, I've had clients come to me and it's clearly a job that's been out there for 2 years. It's a government job. It's gone through lighting agencies that have done design work on this, and they have money in for that design work, right? And they're going to get paid for that design work. Engineers have worked on it, right? So there's a lot of layers to it. And they might not realize, like, oh, there's games going on out there. I'm not going to get the right price because these guys are in on it. Well, maybe these guys have been budgeting 2 years on it. They just have the edge over you, right? So if you want to bid this job, bid the job, but like be practical about it. You might not win this job, so why are you bidding it? Are you bidding it to get in with the client? Are you bidding it because you really want to get the job? Because if you do that, you might have to take a hit, right? Mm-hmm. There's just a lot more things to look at than, just counting items and putting it out there when you're doing an estimate. When you're executing a tender, you need to know, is this contractor I'm bidding to my friend or not? Do I even have a chance of getting this work? Or, I've seen it where they give all the work to one guy and they just kind of get their third number. They just keep going out to the industry to get people to give them numbers until they give up and then they go to the next guy, right? Geographically, is it in your region, right? Yeah, like your question was, is there an easy nugget? And you can make things easier on yourself by doing them right. You know what I mean? You can make them easier on yourself by doing the work up front, but it's all like work. Every aspect of it, you got to be willing to put the time in and learn what you're doing. And like you had said, there's a certain aspect and respect out there for someone that's come out of the trade, that's, twisted the screw, that's, terminated the cable, that you get over someone that's just jumping in maybe at a higher level, working purely off stats.
John, what's like looking back at course one and course two now, and a lot of things you're saying we've heard from other people as well. So you're just reinforcing like these practices and I mean it starting your own company and running an electrical company. There's a lot the administration and the execution. That's a lot. But if I get back to the course one and course two, what's the timeline? How long does it take for the two courses? What are the number of hours?
Yeah, so each course is 16 hours each. So we do them in 2 day increments, and we also kind of run half day ones where we do 4 hour days. And we find that works a lot really good for the smaller businesses. They can kind of do, you know, maybe early in the morning do that and then get their day to day done afterwards. We find the bigger companies like the 2 8 hour days because they can get their employees aren't going to come in for half a day. They go to site for half a day, so they can jump in for 2 days and do it. And that's just the thing is it's only a couple 2 day courses, and we usually try to keep it to within 2 days. Once it goes into 3 and 4 days, people have to make more of a time commitment. It changes their time off. And when quite frankly, we find a lot of people, it's a lot that we kind of cram into those days. It gets to be too much. We even tried doing the courses back to back, and we usually find people's brains get fried, so we kind of try to separate them and do like a month in between. And in those 2 days, you're not going to come out being like a 100% proficient estimator. It's just starting point, right? It's learning that methodology.
Yeah, starting point is like I think is so critical. Like I don't know where to start. I remember when I used to do rough ends, I'm like, hey, should I do all the lights first? Should I do all the receptacles first,
Yeah.
or should I do each room and move on to the next room? And I mean, but you can sit there and spin in circles, but at the end of the day, you got to have a starting point and pull that trigger. So
Yeah. So something I've learned, just kind of based on what you said, is that everything doesn't apply to everything, right? And I've seen that where I'll look at something and I'm able to apply, like when I was running jobs in the field, okay, all these receptacles are in one room. So I can go around, it's conduit going up the wall, I threw all the conduit up, stubbed them up into the ceilings, put the plugs on, kind of did it all like an assembly line, right? Blasted out really quick. But if it was, you know, 10 receptacles in 10 different rooms, that wouldn't be an effective method to do that, right? It wouldn't be effective to go into one room and throw the pipe up, and go to the next room, throw the pipe up. You're more effective to just do that piece in that room and go to the next one, right? Um, so I've seen that a lot too, where people learn something and then they try to apply it to everything they do, right? And it doesn't technically pan out all the time. And that's where you got to be able to think on your feet and, take the stuff you've learned and apply it practically, right? And that's where it comes into, again, make your own unit pricing up, put your own bid together, right? Don't just ask what labor rate should I go out at. Look at what you pay your guys. Look at what it actually costs you for your guys. So a lot of people coming in from the field don't realize that. They're getting paid $40 an hour, but it actually costs the company 50, 52, possibly more, depending on what RSPs are on there and what the benefit plans are, right? And then look at what the markup is on top of that, right? So there's a lot of layers that I don't want to say is lost, but that people just don't understand until they get into it, right? And it's just taking it piece by piece and doing one thing at a time. And as you do that, you're going to gain the experience and you're going to gain the knowledge and you're going to be able to start looking at a job. I would never square foot a job for pricing it, but I have a ton of stats that I know that job should come in around this square foot number, And when it doesn't, I say, why? I don't price a job with that. I say, why isn't it coming in here? Okay, it's got a big generator unit on it. That makes sense. If I take that generator cost out, yeah, it kind of comes in there, right? So that's that 9 out of 10 I think I was talking about before where, if you're just working on a pure stat level and you're not, you don't know the nuts and bolts that are in there, 9 out of 10 jobs, you're going to be okay. But that 10th one, it could hurt you, if you miss that item, right?
yeah, and I mean, obviously, you're doing all the work. You want to be making money, not costing yourself money.
Mm-hmm.
That holistic approach, and like talking about all those layers. I mean, that's obviously a skill set that you need to be good at estimating. And I think one thing that stood out to me is like talking about those wholesaler relationships is something that even personally, until I started doing some estimating, I don't think people understand the value of all of that when it comes to actually estimating and pricing a job. Is there something else we're missing? What else makes a good estimator that, maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Well, if we're looking at client relationships, I mean, that's the first one, right? Um, we get clients that come in, I'm going to start an electrical business. And I look and they're just bidding open market jobs, right? They don't know any GCs. They don't really have any connections in the wholesaler side. So it's going to be a tough grind for a while until they build some relationships, right? And then you want to be accurate with your quotes. You want to be systematic and thorough with your project management. But if you don't have the relationships on both sides, it's still hard to execute and make a profit, right? You can get the work, you can execute good, but are you making any money, and is it worth it at that point, right? So yeah, I've seen companies go out there, and I've actually seen this one a lot. Banks, right? We're gonna bid this bank. First time I was like, okay, let's do it, right? So I got into it, worked on it for a week, threw out some RFIs, got an answer back, a sheet came out, an addendum. This electrical contractor does these banks. I was like, well, that's not us. So did I just waste a week of my time here, right? It wasn't a full week. I was doing other things, right? Then I saw a similar thing come around again, right? That time I was smarter to it. I was like, look, this is what happened last time. It's been a couple years since then. You might want to check in and see if, this institution still uses this contractor. Sure enough, they put an RFI in, and an addendum came out, and I was like, this has been years. How come they haven't fixed this yet? How come they haven't just written it into the scope, right? But again, I was at another place, and they did a bank, right? And they said, we're never going to do a bank again because we didn't make money on it. Another place, they were like, we, did a Tim Hortons once, and we're never doing them again because we didn't make money on it. Well, I knew in both those scenarios, there was companies that had done those banks like 10 times, companies that have done like 20 or 30 Tim Hortons, right? So again, it's a market thing, right? Do you want to do that job? Then go in there and do it, and don't expect you're going to make a lot of money the first time. But like the third or fourth time, you should start finding your profit level then. You should start learning the job. You're going to learn it in the office. Your guys on site are going to learn the job, right? They're going to learn how to execute and where everything goes. It's going to be a lot more faster and efficient, right? So yeah, you have to find your place in the market and work it, right? You can't just jump from job to job to job and say, okay, we didn't make money on that. What's the next one, right? We didn't make money on that. What's the next one, right? You gotta, and as you get more work and you execute good and you start making money, you're going to gain that respect from your contractors that you're working with, right? Your clients and the wholesalers are going to start paying attention to you, right? Hey, these guys are issuing POs. Maybe we should send someone over, right? Maybe we should set something up with them. They have a inside sales guy here, right? Mm-hmm. But that takes time. That doesn't happen overnight.
It all takes time. Yeah.
It's all time and work.
Lots of learning is going to continue to take place.
Yeah.
Zach, do we got anything else we want to talk about?
So a big thing that's come up in the last couple of years, John, is AI. We got into it a little bit with Melvin, but how do you see AI in the next, 1 to 2 years affecting estimating?
Hey man, right back to what we talked about already, right? Another thing that people look at and go, hey, that's the easy button, right? I don't want to estimate. I'm just going to get this software. This AI is going to do it for me, right? You still want someone at the helm of it that knows what they're doing. You still want to understand what the software is doing, what they're counting, right? So even if you have AI counting things for you, what's in that assembly, right? If you just jump in the software and say start counting stuff, it's not going to do right now. You can do counts, but it's not going to do a lot of linear runs and things like that for you. You're still going to have to do that. So you're going to have to get in there. You're going to have to set up what your assemblies are, learn the AI. You still got to kind of go through it and see, if it's captured everything or if it's missed some things. So it's actually a really, as much as it can be a huge advantage to someone that knows what they're doing and that's put the time in and learned, it can be a huge liability to someone that thinks this is a great shortcut. I'm just going to jump in and, jump ahead of all these guys, right? Jump ahead of all this trade knowledge. And then there ends up being a ton of things missed in it because the AI didn't know. The AI didn't know to capture this stuff, right? And the person doing it also didn't know to capture it, right? So it's a great tool and it's a great opportunity if it's used correctly, like any tool. A chainsaw can be a very handy tool. It's a lot more quicker and less energy than using a handsaw. but in the wrong hands, you could literally lose a hand. You know, um, AI estimating software, excellent tools. In our courses, we teach basic estimating, we teach hands-on. At the end of it, we always do software. Just show them software, give them some guidelines, and tell them, like, if you want to talk about it, we highly recommend after you do a couple of jobs by hand that you start looking at software options, because that's the next step in it, right? But just take the first steps. You know what I mean? In the courses you guys teach, you don't just have people go into high voltage situations, working on 15 kV, right? They're learning 120 volt plugs, lights, and then they progress through it, right? And it's just, you don't want to jump over that stuff. You want to hit every single item that you need to along the way, even if it's just kind of like a quick kind of cruise through it, at least so that you understand it. You understand what's in there and what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's important to be thorough. But I loved your explanation of AI too, right? How it can be such a powerful tool if you know what you're doing, but if you don't, it just gives you that false sense of security, which we definitely do not want in any electrical installation.
Yeah, and that's it. I think there is applications out there, like ChatGPT. It is more of a full service type one that a lot of people could use. You still might want to read through it, but it can give you more of a finished product, right? Mechanical and electrical estimating is a bit different. Like if you're talking about, like I was saying before, flooring, walls, 3 or 4 items in there. You can look at square footage type takeoffs. AI could be a bit more progressive there. But electrical mechanical, there's just so many nicks and knacks and things like that in there that, you want to make sure the person at the helm of the ship can drive like an engineer on a train, right? Or your captain in a boat. Just because you have good technology on an airplane, a child could probably sit there and fly the airplane. It can land itself, but you don't want a child running it, right? You want someone flying the airplane that is well versed and trained at doing it.
Yeah, it's important to be able to. I think that's a great point. I always think back to the early GPSs in vehicles and that news story where someone drove their cars into a lake. And sometimes it's important to kind of maybe know what you're getting yourself into. So when it comes to estimating, having a background in the industry would probably be an asset. When you're taking your car on a trip, it would be nice to know that the destination that you're heading towards is north of you. John, thanks so much for being with us today. If people are interested in Suderman and have questions for you, what's a good place for them to find your contact information?
You just go right to our website, www.sudermanestimating.com. And we got all our information on there and our courses when they're running. You can also reach out to me personally, John Wiesel, JohnWiesel, at sudermanestimating.com. That's it.
Awesome. And are you guys on LinkedIn?
We are on LinkedIn as well, too. Yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram, all that stuff.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in today to What's the Word. Don't forget, if you're an Apple Podcast, rate this episode, tell a friend about it. That's what helps us the most, get the word out on the show. You can connect with us on Facebook or Instagram or our website, all of them at What's the Word Podcast. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Fine.